thanks for clicking on my video. So Street Fighter 6 has finally entered its second season with the release of Akuma. I hope you're all having fun with it. But with no information on DLC characters coming in the future, us fans have been forced to speculate, dream, or pray to
whatever entity you choose
for our favorites to get added to the new generation of games. And you see, in my eyes, Street Fighter 6 is a nearly perfect game, but it does have one pretty glaring flaw. Where the fuck is Makoto? I mean, seriously, she got like second in a popularity contest for Street Fighter V, and yet she was still completely passed over for that game. So unless I'm crazy, which, I mean, it's been yet to be clinically proven, she's coming. Maybe not this season, but she will be here eventually. And despite what I've seen a couple other creators say, and even some YouTube comments, I think she's going to be a great fit. So today I want to discuss how she's going to work in Street Fighter 6. However, when providing food for thought, I'm the kind of chef that likes to provide a whole 5-course gourmet meal rather than a bag of Doritos or something, and I've been cooking. I dug through her entire moveset, analyzed how a lot of those moves work, analyzed how some similar moves work in Street Fighter 6, and made some changes, as well as sprinkled in a little bit of my own secret ingredients. So without any further ado, this is my complete theoretical breakdown for Makoto in Street Fighter 6.
Alright, that's cool.
So as you know, if you know anything about Makoto, it's that she walks really slowly, but she dashes super fucking fast. This makes her movement abnormally bursty, which is absolutely fundamental to her playstyle. In Third Strike, she has both the fastest and farthest forward dash in the game, being 11 frames and 150 pixels. As of right now, Cammy, Kimberly, and Rashid have the fastest forward dashes in SF6 at 18 frames. As far as I could find, distance isn't really measured by pixels anymore, but we can estimate that her dash goes about half screen. Her backdash seems less impressive, but it is still really fast. And this one doesn't need to go all that far. In fact, she would probably prefer if it didn't. You know, for like whiff punishes and stuff. Almost all backdashes are 23 frames in SF6, but I think a slightly faster one would help her stand out and encourage her bursty movement. I threw together some approximate numbers for what I think these stats could be, and put Ryu's stats next to them for comparison. Those should be up on the screen now. But these numbers specifically are really difficult to estimate without being like an actual game designer, so take these with a grain of salt. Her jumps aren't anything special, so these would remain completely normal to how most of the rest of the cast jumps. But now let's get into the fun stuff, starting with her normals. Light Punch is the first of her 4-frame normals. It's quite short compared to most lights in 6, meaning it would only chain into itself twice. On counter hit, which if you don't know, in Street Fighter 6 when you get a counter hit you get 2 extra frames of advantage, it's plus enough for a conversion into her 6-frame medium punch, which is different, we'll get into that later. And on punish counter, which gives you 4 extra frames of advantage, you can go straight into her 8-frame heavy punch as kind of a trade-off for how short the range is. To make up for this very short range, you have forward Light Punch. This has similar frame data, a little extra range, and can be chained into, but not out of. This gives her a pretty interesting light block string compared to most characters. Light Punch is very short, but a quick switch to forward Light Punch allows you to get one last tap in at the expense of 1 frame of advantage, meaning that you're no longer +6 on hit, you're +5. This means she can't get a medium punch combo anymore and instead has to rely on her light kick combos, since this move isn't itself cancelable. This takes more execution than most light strings, but it does offer a bit more reward since she is a high damaging character. Crouching Light Punch has a bit more range than Light Punch, but not as much as forward Light Punch. It's chainable into itself, but not anything else. This is essentially an easy version of her more complicated light string that I just gave, since it has the same reward as the forward Light Punch, but doesn't utilize the higher reward standing Light Punch. It could also work as a situational drive rush check, but it will probably mostly be used for counter poking against close opponents. Light Kick is also a 4-frame option, but it has no chaining capabilities whatsoever. It has farther range than even forward Light Punch, making it your best normal for light conversions. This move would also function as a decent drive rush check and a pretty good anti-air, especially when comboed with its target combo, Light Kick into Medium Kick. My idea for this target combo is to make it dash cancelable, so theoretically she could anti-air with Light Kick Medium Kick, and then dash, and since that second medium kick air resets, she'd get right under them and they'd land, and she'd be just barely plus. Her forward light kick is, well, to be honest, I'm not really sure what this move was meant to be used for in Third Strike. I guess it does work pretty well as a reset tool when you're doing corner juggles, but in the context of this game, a fast, long-reaching, somewhat disjointed attack is perfect for checking drive rushes. At +5, a counter hit will allow you to follow up with her crouching medium punch. Her crouching light kick is a fast, long, special cancelable low, which is probably the most enabling move for Makoto in her entire kit. If she is plus in your face, you have got to be watching your toes. This move would be pretty different from a lot of low light mix-ups in Street Fighter 6. Rather than chaining into other lights, it could have some decent pushback on block, so its primary use is still going to be canceling into a special move for the damage. But if you don't want to commit to anything, you can use it as a little spacing trap so long as you space it properly, since at -4 you're going to get light punished if you're too close. So next is medium punch, which is one of her best normals in third strike. This thing had the same startup as her heavy punch, which isn't great, but in return it was +6 on block and had 11 active frames, which is fucking insane. And in the context of Street Fighter 6, that's just not possible. But most characters do have 1 or 2 normals that are plus on block, so this can just be hers. In exchange, I'm changing the startup to 6 frames so that it can function as a medium conversion tool. It doesn't have great range, but that's made up for in its utility and pressure. It's also a pretty decent drive rush check, and at +5, it combos into light kick naturally and crouching medium punch on counter hit. Her forward medium punch is a move that I literally have yet to find a use for in third strike, but I think in Street Fighter 6 it could actually be a decent out of drive rush option, since she kind of takes a step back before jabbing her fist in. But changing it a little more, I think we can actually make it one of the most interesting parts of her ground game. This move is +2 on block in third strike, but if we make it +3 and it leaves her practically point blank, it creates a true 50-50. Medium punch becomes a frame trap, which means that you can consistently get some plus frames, but it also means they may attempt a perfect parry. But again, if you know anything about Makoto, a big part of her game plan is the command grab, which means that parries are going to carry a lot of risk. This also means they may decide to jump instead, which medium punch will catch, though only for an air reset. This means that if you can land this pretty slow forward medium punch, you're essentially forcing the issue, and you're either going to get some consistent plus frames, or maybe just a little hit for an air reset, or potentially a punish counter command grab, but your opponent can only really perfect parry your medium punch if that's what you decide to do, or they can jump the command grab and get a pretty fat punish. But that's really the one scenario where you truly lose, whereas there's 3 where you're doing pretty well. At +4 on hit, you gain access to light combos naturally, medium on counter hit, and heavy on punish counter or drive rush, which is especially good since this move would be a pretty good drive rush option. Crouching medium punch is another one of her greatest normals. It's really long, reasonably fast, and special cancelable. In third strike, it is her best poke in the mid-range, but in Street Fighter 6 it would gain so much more than that. Being able to drive rush off this thing would be just... Even on block, you're going from mid-range to close range, which is right where she wants to be every time. Plus, imagine trying to drive rush into an opponent that has this thing they can stick out. But that being said, we don't need another Luke situation on our hands, so this thing will be hella whiff punishable with a massively extended hitbox and probably some pretty low pushback on block so that it can remain light punishable at -4, but be consistently light punishable from most ranges other than like the hand part, you know? Medium kick is a good long poke that is mostly used as an anti-air, and I don't really see that changing much. Without the use of the light kick for the target combo, this would not lead to as good of Oki after the anti-air. At -3, this move is safe on block, but the further ranges of its hitbox will whiff on crouch, so it'll mostly be used as a pretty decent spacing trap. Forward medium kick is a forward advancing roundhouse. It's kind of an approach tool, but not a very good one in third strike. I've used it for chasing back jumps and stuff, but it's pretty niche altogether. In Street Fighter 6, it could be a really good option out of drive rush, since it could be kind of like Jamie's forward heavy kick, where he goes like full screen. And plus, Makoto has a very similar version with a forward heavy kick that instead of a mid is a low. So it'd be kind of a mix-up in that regard, and both of those can actually be held to feint the attack. So what you could do is you could do drive rush, forward medium kick, but hold it, and then stop in front of them, see them with a drive rush check, and then whiff punish it. At +2 on hit, you're going to get some light conversions if you manage to counter hit with it, and some medium conversions if you do punish. Seeing as this would mostly get used out of drive rush though, you're pretty much just going to get a medium combo afterwards, unless you do get that counter hit, in which now you can go into a heavy punch combo. There is also a target combo into heavy kick, which wouldn't be great for damage and would kind of get rid of your decent frame advantage if you used it out of drive rush, but if you used it normally and you hit them blocking and you wanted to just like create some space, you could go right into heavy kick and push them back a little bit so that you're not quite as punishable. Crouch medium kick is pretty much just a solid poke. She is not a crouch medium kick drive rush enjoyer. It's got niche anti-air uses, it's got pretty good range, so it'd be a good drive rush check, but it's just a get off me button, really. It's just creating some space. When it comes to optimal combo attacks, Makoto's best option is always going to be her standing heavy punch. It's not very long, it's incredibly punishable, and it entirely whiffs on crouch, but it is one of the fastest heavies in the game. The slap is infamous as a starter after Karakusa, which is her command grab, and that's pretty much how it's gonna stay. And not only that, but those Karakusa combos are going to be even more devastating with the ability to drive rush cancel this thing. That being said, unless you're punishing something or using it in a combo already, you're probably never going to use this move because you'll just die for it. Her forward heavy punch is a step forward into a punch, and she steps pretty much all the way back. If you press it a couple more times, you get like a 1-2-3 combo, and after you do that, you maintain your position after the step. This is mostly used as like a niche anti-air option in third strike, but if any move were going to change entirely from her kit, I could definitely see it being this one, just because we already have some good forward advancing moves. So I could see them changing this to like a normal overhead, since at the moment her only overhead is her special move, the overhead chop. And I built a whole set of frame data and stuff for this, but as I thought about it more, I actually think it would be better to just leave it as it is. But I'll give you both. You can decide what you like more. It depends on how oppressive you want this woman to be out of drive rush. As of right now, the only option she doesn't have out of drive rush is a good overhead. And I think it should stay that way. Her crouching heavy punch is just her sweep. Pretty straightforward, but as far as sweeps go, this one is a little on the safer side and a little on the faster side. Heavy kick is a big strong kick that is pretty long and pretty slow. With a lot of pushback, it's actually pretty safe on block, even though it's quite negative. This would mostly be used as a whiff punish button or a space trap in the corner. There are a lot of moves in Street Fighter 6 that have different properties when they land on punish counter, and I think that this move could have a tumbling effect, kind of like Jamie's heavy palm on punish counter, which would allow her to dash up and set up some corner pressure. And maybe some really fancy corner combos or something. I talked about her forward heavy kick earlier, so I won't touch on that much more here. All I want to say is drive rush, forward, medium / heavy kick, feint into command grab would be a thing. I'll leave you with that. Crouching heavy kick is maybe her best anti-air normal. It does a lot of damage and leaves her enough time after the anti-air to dash up for some Oki. In Street Fighter 6, I imagine this is her optimal button for drive rush combos, since it will force the opponent to stand and do a lot of damage. I also imagine that it would crumple the opponent on punish counter, much like Ryu's heavy kick, which obviously leads to some pretty strong combos. On regular hits, due to the pushback, you're not going to be able to get any combos, but if you do get that counter hit, you might be able to reach with a crouching medium punch. Whew, okay. Those are all of her normals. Are you still with me? For the sake of pacing in the video, we're gonna do a lightning round real quick for all of these jump normals. You ready? 3, 2, 1. Jump light punch is a 4-frame air normal, probably not useful for much more than a jump back light to keep the corner. Jump medium punch is the one where she sticks out her arm. This would likely be very useful as an air-to-air with a big hitbox. Jump heavy punch will be her aerial chop. This thing has a great angle on its hitbox, so it's your most rewarding jumping approach button. Think Luke's jump heavy punch. Okay, now stop. That move is evil. Don't let it rot your brain like that. Jump light kick is her most reliable air-to-air. Essentially, her entire body becomes a little hitbox. Jump medium kick is the best overall jump normal. This is your cross-up aerial, but even without that, it's just fast and big with plenty of active frames. Jump heavy kick is a fat roundhouse in the air. I found it to be one of her best air normals. It takes a while to swing that leg, but the horizontal hitbox is huge and it hits hard. And boom, just like that. Third strike has a lot of like differences between neutral jump attacks and like forward jump attacks, but Street Fighter 6 doesn't have those, so those are the ones I chose. And now I need to pee, and help one of my roommates clean our old house, because I just moved, which you may have noticed if you're a fan of mine. I hope you like the new setup. It's pretty cool. I have a much bigger room, if you couldn't tell. But forget I said any of that. I'm actually a wizard. Watch this. Alright, let's talk about some special moves. So most characters have received some new special moves when coming into Street Fighter 6, and I'm very interested to see what they do with that. But for now, her kit is really well rounded, and I could honestly also see them just kind of keeping it the same. So I'm just going to work with what we've got. So for the most part, Hayate is going to remain just how it's always been. It's your combo ender, and a quick attack that can move very far in neutral. In third strike, being minus 12 on block was usually fine. You'll get punished for sure, but most of the time that's just going to be eat 20% and move on with your life. But in this game, getting hit by a punish counter heavy attack is like death. So I'm going to tweak it a bit and give each version a varying level of risk. The light version, being minus 3, gives her a safe buffer in neutral, which most characters, especially in her archetype, have. This also means that her burnout pressure can consist of normal into light Hayate, at least until they're out of range, which gives her a pretty good way to chip out opponents. The medium version is a much less safe buffer. You might be able to get away with it if you are spaced really properly, but in most situations you're just going to get punished at minus 6. The heavy version is the traditional minus 12, which means you're eating that fat death punish that I talked about earlier if you get careless with this one. But it also does the most damage and goes the farthest. Each of these versions are +2 on hit, which means that if you get a counter hit, you will be able to follow up with a light combo. And even better, punishing with Hayate will cause a crumple state, which gives you a full combo. If you were to hold down the attack button, she will stand there and wait until you let go of the button to release the Hayate, which gives a lot of opportunities for tricky setups and just waiting for the opponent to try and check your attack before unleashing it for the punish. And pressing a kick while holding down the punch will straight up cancel the move, which also lets you fake a Hayate and then dash in for a command grab. OD Hayate is a full screen plus on block attack that causes a juggle state on hit, much like it did in third strike. It's important to note for this move that while it does move incredibly fast across the screen, it can be checked at any point by hitting her at her feet, much like you would with Marissa's Gladius. Fukiyage is her anti-air special, and I can't imagine this one would change very much. All it really needs to do is function as a niche anti-air and juggle combo tool. As a super offense-oriented character, I don't want to give her an invincible reversal, but I do want it to function as her best anti-air option, so for this reason I'm giving it some air invincibility, especially on the OD version. While each version of this attack is jump cancelable to allow for some air juggles, the OD version, which sends them a lot higher into the air, is also dash cancelable. This is important for implementing the double Fukiyage combo into the game in a way that isn't like absurdly fucking broken. In third strike, Orochi is Makoto's only grounded overhead. That isn't the universal one, I guess. It's mostly used as a meaty, particularly the EX version. The main thing I want for Orochi in Street Fighter 6 is for it to be one of her most devastating combo starters, which means that it's not going to have a ton of pushback on hit or block, so it's also much more punishable. I could also see this being a cheeky reset move, so let's say you're pressuring with medium punch and you cancel into Orochi. The light version leaves a gap of 3 frames, making it a true frame trap, and at +2 on hit, if you get the counter hit, you can follow up with a light combo. If you're testing their reactions a little bit and going with the medium version, you're guaranteed that light follow-up, and if you get a counter hit, you now have a medium follow-up. All of the versions also have a ground bounce on punish counter, which means that if you use it as a spacing trap or just as a straight up punish starter, you're going to get a full juggle combo. Up next is Karakusa, her infamous command grab. This thing is simultaneously the most underwhelming and badass command grab in all of Street Fighter, and this shit's gonna act exactly how you think it will. Why mess with perfection, right? But we do need to add an OD version and decide what it's going to do. In Street Fighter 6, swift command grabs eat some of the fattest punishes in the entire game, so I figured one of the main benefits of using her OD command grab could be that it recovers quite a bit faster than the other versions. The primary benefit, however, comes from what it does on punish counter. In this case, the squeeze of it would do a lot more damage and do a little screen freeze or something, just because I think that would be cool, and leave the opponent crumpled for your most devastating combo. Tsugiri is her main air juggle tool. It can be used to knock the opponent up again to be followed up with a Hayate or something on the ground, or it can simply just knock them back down again. In a lot of ways, this move is also quite similar to how it was in third strike, but I did give it an extra active frame because I can't think of a single move that has just one active frame in all of Street Fighter 6. But otherwise, once again, why fix what ain't broke? So Blast is her supers, and before I get into all that, I just want to talk about some of her drive properties, how they might look and function, because I know one of the main things you guys are probably thinking of is how her drive rush is going to work. Drive parry is a universal mechanic. The main thing I wanted to mention is just that I think it would be really cool if you just take her parry animations from third strike and put them here. For her drive reversal, for whatever reason, the move that comes into mind is, if you've ever seen the Jaden Smith version of Karate Kid, where he does like the push-up and palm thing in the chest. I just imagine it'd be something like that, some like big push with her hands. And her drive impact could look pretty much exactly like her focus attack does in Street Fighter 4. And yes, I do know that this is the first time I've mentioned Street Fighter 4, but that's mainly because I've played Street Fighter 4 like maybe once in my life, and I watched a lot of her gameplay from it to see if there was anything cool that I could take from it, and, you know, she pretty much just plays like Makoto does. She's got some other different cool combos that will be likely implemented into the next game, but it wasn't enough for me to really give a lot of consideration to. Alright, so lastly, Drive Rush, the important one. This is the main reason that people who don't think she'll be a good fit say that she won't be a good fit, but it's also the reason that I think she'll be a great fit because of how her movement is already very bursty, which means you don't need to spend Drive Rush on it. But what does that mean for her Drive Rush? Is it just useless at that point, or do we make it just go full screen all the time? Nope. The way I think they will decide to implement this is by slowing the beginning of it way down, kind of like you see with Juri's. Like, Juri has an incredibly fast Drive Rush, as we all know, but she does have this weird startup to her Drive Rush, where she kind of takes a step and then explodes forward. And I think Makoto can be pretty much the same way, just to the nth degree. So ultimately what I've decided on is for her to take a kind of shuffle forward so that she has some forward movement towards the beginning for her Drive Rush combos, and towards the end of it is when she explodes forward, moving very fast and going pretty far. So here are the stats for all that, but allow me to explain what this actually means. Using the distance traveled, which I assume is measured in meters per second, you'll see that Makoto is moving very slowly at the start of her Drive Rush. If she were to cancel it as early as possible, she would probably make it barely any distance in front of her. But if she waits to cancel for a little while, she can do so at any point during her regular dash range and even a little beyond. This is neither the fastest nor the farthest Drive Rush, but it is kind of a nice mixture of the two. It would mean that closing the gap with a normal dash is much faster than Drive Rushing in, but Drive Rush does allow you to get a little extra range with a whole lot more reward. I could also imagine a lot of her normals having a lot more forward momentum when they come out of the fast part of the Drive Rush than they do coming out of the beginning of it. This type of Drive Rush would also mean that she doesn't have a lot of extra corner carry coming out of her combos, since she has enough of that already. On the side of the opponent, it actually makes reacting to her raw Drive Rush a hell of a lot easier than it is her actual dash. And on an executional level, there is very rarely any benefit to canceling out of her Drive Rush as fast as you can, which means you're going to have to rely more on manual timings than you would with other characters. I think implementing her Drive Rush in this way really covers all the bases. It maintains her bursty feeling movement without allowing her to capitalize on a system mechanic more so than other characters would, just because this is kind of what she's been doing the entire time anyway. And last but not least, we've got her supers. Now, Makoto has 3 pretty awesome supers, and they all line up perfectly for how a lot of these supers in Street Fighter 6 work. The main question is, do we want her Super 1 or her Super 3 to be her level 3? I debated a lot between the two, but ultimately I think we made the best decision possible. Up first, we've got level 1, Abare Tosanami. If Jamie can combo off his level 3 and Akuma can combo off his level 2, fuck it, Makoto can combo off her level 1. The initial jump to the wall is completely invincible, and it only takes a maximum of 18 frames. At this point, the super screen freeze will begin before a quick line of active frames initiate on her way to the ground. Connecting with a grounded opponent during this time begins the subsequent combo. If Abare hits a blocking opponent, you are quite negative, but not the worst. However, if the move whiffs, the recovery is actually really low, making it really difficult, if not impossible, to punish. This means that in terms of damage, it's best used at the beginning of a combo, but when using it as an invincible reversal, your best bet is to just go to the other end of the screen, since the long startup means you're likely not going to be able to hit the opponent for doing whatever their media option was. I put this super at level 1 for a couple of reasons, the main one being that, spoiler alert, her level 2 is Tanden Renki. I figured the more execution heavy that the super you can do while in Tanden Renki is, the better. The other reason being, I really think it's for the best if her only true invincible reversal is her level 3, especially now that Drive Reversal does what it does on Wake Up. She's just such an offense-oriented character that her defense has to suffer a bit, or she'd just get ridiculous. But even so, I think this being a get-out-of-jail-free card when you're in the corner and in burnout is still completely acceptable. Level 2 is Tanden Renki. This is Makoto's install super, and it sends her into a rage for about 15 seconds. While this super is active, Makoto's damage is increased by a whopping 15%, at the expense of her ability to block. This leaves parry as the only defensive option available. This version is actually quite a bit better than it was in Third Strike, considering that parry doesn't always require precise timing. However, without regular blocking available, using parry at all becomes a huge risk, since the second you let go of the button, you are in a free punish counter state for a really long time, especially after the parry nerf. You could get punished really hard for whiffing a block, It's interesting to note that this is very similar to how it works in Third Strike, but actually quite different from how it works in 4. That version got rid of the whole blocking disadvantage thing and then cut the extra damage like by a lot. But personally, I think that's what's really cool about this super, and I definitely didn't want to get rid of it. And finally, level 3, Seichusen Godansuki. This works like almost every other level 3 in the game. It triggers a big cinematic on hit and does a fuck ton of damage. This move is practically just a level 3 as it is anyway, so I think it is the perfect fit for this part of her kit. So there you have it. I hope you all enjoyed this video. I put a whole bunch of time into it, and it's one that I had been planning on making since before I even restarted doing my YouTube channel. Hopefully I've persuaded you to see the Makoto vision, and if I haven't, well, tough luck, dude. There's no way she doesn't come to this game. If you enjoyed this, please leave a like and a comment. I love talking to my viewers. It's my favorite part of this whole YouTuber thing. And if you want to see more content from me, please subscribe to the channel. I've got a whole bunch more Street Fighter content on the way. I've got other fighting games in general, video essays coming. I want to do more of these theoretical builds. And I still plan on making some non-fighting game related stuff at some point. We've got a bright future ahead of us, plenty of stuff to talk about. But anyway, thank you all very much. Sorry this one took me a while, and I will see you once again very, very soon.
We await your return, warrior.